I want to share with you my experience of the islands of Malta in the Mediterranean. What strikes me most about this island is the influence of nearby Italy and Roman Catholicism. Everywhere you go, there are shrines to Catholic saints. I imagine that these shrines would have been to the old gods had paganism continued. Where the beautiful statues of Virgin Mary are prominent, there would have been goddess statues, I am sure. Amazingly, the many temples and deity statues of Malta's pagan past have survived in museums and excavation sites. Dozens of Venus goddesses with exaggerated curves contrast starkly with the slim Madonnas. Full-bodied ladies were clearly idolised by the pagans. In a pre-industrialised pagan culture, the ability to eat well was a blessing, and these blessings were laden upon women. Beauty standards would have focused on the thickness of limbs and the roundness of hips. We can see from the carved figures that the clothing worn was sparse. Most of the figures wear a short skirt at most. Perhaps some fine clothing would have been painted onto the curvy bodies. Now you may be mistaken for thinking that the goddess statues were desecrated by way of removing the heads, but this was actually a deliberate design. Why did the statues have removable heads? It is believed that different heads were fashioned to represent different priestesses. This was in fact a common practice in Roman paganism. A special head was created for the individual being granted the honour and attached to the pre-existing statue. Once that person had served their role and retired from their position, the head would be removed and a new one made for the next priestess. Malta was intensely Hellenized from the 3rd century BCE, and the gods of Olympus gained public worship with Zeus at the top of the hierarchy. The priestesses of Malta continued their work independently of state-sponsored Hellenic religion. Priestess practices were organised according to each district's chosen representatives to serve the local community. This is where the word paganism derives from the Latin pagus, meaning a rural district. The fact that there was no standardised religion with a canon of religious texts or practices meant that there was a huge amount of diversity and creativity in paganism. The island of Malta had many temples, each with their unique rituals. Pagan rituals were mainly performed at altars devoted to one or several gods, with offerings made such as food, drink, and precious objects. The temple structures themselves were designed to represent the body of the goddess who was worshipped there. The remains of the temple walls are intact today and accessible to the public. You enter at the base of the torso into the lower body, then pass through a narrow waist and into the upper body, finally reaching the neck and head. These are the oldest stone temples in Europe, dating to the early Neolithic period, and gradually updated over time. The temples are evidence of the cultural shift from nomadic gathering to settled communities. Many of the limestone blocks are beautifully carved with decorative spirals that resemble vines. The cultivation of vines would have been an important part of the agricultural economy. How was life for the priestesses of Malta at this time? Neolithic women were very strong, physically fitter than any female athletes today. A huge amount of work went into converting grains into flour to make bread. We have evidence of wheat, barley and lentil recovered from the Gard Alam levels at Skorba, an early Neolithic village close to Zebia. The fact that people had enough free time to build and maintain elaborate temples shows that life was not a constant struggle to gather food, but in fact they celebrated their stores of surplus provisions. By using agriculture, the island was able to comfortably support about 4,000 individuals. It appears that priestesses were also considered healers. Medical therapy and midwifery was intertwined with their magico-religious practices. Based on the statuary remains found at the Hypogeum, It has been suggested that this site served as a sanctuary in which devotees were able to consult an oracle under the direction of a numerous priesthood who, among other things, practiced oniomancy. That is, they interpreted dreams provoked in the faithful that slept in cubicles. Walking around this ancient goddess temple, I try to imagine it in its former glory. The beautiful carvings, the statues, brightly painted in vivid colours, wafting of incense smoke, pouring of libations. The music and songs to the Great Mother.